first, let me introduce myself. I'm Marie Georgopulos. That is my married name, my maiden name, so I am Greek by marriage. And I'm a healer, an intuitive counselor. I'm also a spiritual mentor and writer. I've been on this journey for many years now, and it started, first of all, with my own healing journey and understanding really what was happening to me. I had a lot of chronic illnesses, from sinusitis to asthma, and they had gotten to a point where they were very debilitating. I couldn't work. I'd really blown out my adrenals, and I was in stress-a-hol, and I was just down in my energy so much that I couldn't even get out of bed to help my daughter, who was 3 years old at the time. And during this time, I really decided that I had to figure out another way to heal myself. Now, I came from a family that was dysfunctional. Like, who doesn't have a dysfunctional family, right? But we had addicts and alcoholics. There was sexual abuse. There was emotional abuse, and of course, things that went on in our family that were all about the inner victim and all about a lack of innocence and that loss of innocence, which has to do with the inner child. And so for me, I knew that my journey for this lifetime was really around healing that inner victim and understanding that. But first and foremost, I had to heal my inner child. I had to discover her again. I had to learn to love again. And so while I was laying on the couch one day, taking 2 months off of work, my previous career was fashion design, and I was a workaholic. My addiction showed up differently. It showed up as workaholism. I did go into excessive alcohol use. I never became an alcoholic, but I stopped myself in that. I went into over-exercise and even had my sojourn into spiritual addiction in some ways too. But those were all part of me understanding how to relate better in this dimension, how to integrate these parts of myself that needed healing, that were out there sort of lost in the cosmos and wanted to return back home. And that happens through the process of trauma. You know, we sort of stagnate the growth of our inner child and these parts of ourselves. And so we're meant to integrate all these beautiful, wonderful archetypes that we're here to work with. And archetypes are basically a pattern of being, a pattern of existence that we chose when we came in as a soul. We chose a soul construct, so to speak. And certain ones are here for us to work with in the mass consciousness. So as part of every human being, we all have the archetype of an inner child. You know, you look back on psychology and Jungian philosophy and, of course, Freud, they all delved into that collective unconscious. And we are great myth beings, right? The myth and the journey of the hero is how it started, but I say now it has to be heroine.
Nice.
Because they always say hero's journey is only for men. I said, well, wait a minute. This is the new age. This is the kingdom of heaven, you know, and I am a hero.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for us, I really believe it's time for us to integrate these pieces of ourselves. And one of them that we're here to play with is the inner child. The inner child is a part of our mass consciousness, okay? It's part of everyone's plan here to know this piece of us. And it's a part of our human psyche that needs to develop through the process of love and nurturing, right? So if you come in and you've got great parents and they're all whole and they've completed their journey, like maybe they're Deepak Chopra, or you know,
Good luck with
right,
that,
kind of
parents.
stuff, and they're all whole and doing their inner work, and so you feel more whole and safe, and so you're able to grow and step into your power and your purpose right away. But if you come in and you chose parents that weren't whole, well, that's because it was time for you to really know what was on the opposite end of that, so that you could like make a beeline to where it is that you were supposed to be by that contrast, right? Well, it took me a long time to figure this out, of course, because as I was going through my physical healing, I had to first know how to heal my asthma and breathe, right? So I started that
Breathing
journey.
is good.
Right. You have to start that whole journey of a holistic approach. And so I started studying everything that I could about psychic abilities, about healing modalities, alternative types of healing from not only naturopathy and homeopathy and Reiki and the study of energy and how we, are built as humans in our light system and so on and so forth. And then I fell into this arena of archetypes. And it was through my study in metaphysics and my study into human consciousness and how to heal myself that things just started, coming my way. Oh, you want to know that? Well, here's a book. You can learn about that. It would just plop into my energy. Well, the inner child was one of the things that really helped me to start to heal the layers of trauma and the emotional energy that I carried. Not only that was buried inside my womb, but buried inside my cells, buried in my chakras, and even down into my DNA. And of course, my genealogy, my parents who were both addicts and went through their own level of abuse in their lives. So the inner child is a journey inward and the discovery of it. And the inner child is all about what? Play, right? Innocence. Really understanding the wonder of the world. The availability of our imagination. The inner child knows how to create. The inner child knows how to play in this universe. Knows how to be an adult too when she's properly attended to. And so if we have things where we're feeling like we're not able to heal them and they're just coming up over and over again for review, sometimes we can take a look into this part of ourselves and see what it is that she wants. What did she miss out on as a child? What are the things that she needs right now to heal? Some of my inner child work delved into the different aspects of the inner child because they have facets, each of these archetypes. And know that they're neutral. Like, none of the archetypes are really bad because we have the saboteur, we have the victim as an archetype as well. They're not bad intrinsically. They have their strengths and they have their weaknesses. They have their light and they have their shadow, as is all things in this universe. It is a universe of duality. And so this work will help you to really understand the shadow side and its beautiful brilliance, its reflective brilliance of how to pull into the light. Because what's always on the opposite side of the shadow is the light. And so we can begin to retrain ourselves, basically, by seeing these weaknesses and by knowing them, right? We're able to know when we're pulling into them. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going into this habit right now where I'm feeling afraid, or this response that I'm giving to this certain situation is a part of that healing that I need for my inner child. Who said, oh, I need boundaries. I need boundaries to feel safe. I'm not feeling safe and in my power right now. So the inner child can be in many different facets. I'm going to discuss a few of the different ones. The first one is the wounded child. Now the wounded child, of course, has a history of being wounded, has an abuse in her background. She's one that has the scar tissue that remains in her aura sometimes when she's even born. It can happen as in the womb, as the mother goes through abuse, and we begin to really take in all the things vibrationally that are going on in our environment into our subconscious mind. And so those things then become emotional triggers for us. And they are really a blessing in that way, because they teach us that I need something else here. I'm not having my needs attended to here, okay? And when we are need deficient, we feel unsafe. When we don't fulfill our needs or have them fulfilled, we are feeling unsafe. But who provides this safety for us? What is the grand picture of all of this? And that is us. We have to know how to provide our own sense of well-being, a sense of security, a sense of knowing thyself and our own power, and a way to create in the world. So the wounded child, she feels like she has to lick her wounds all the time sometimes. And sometimes she's in really divine partnership with the inner victim, right? I was so victimized, so I get to be in this entitlement to feel pity. Or I get to be in this entitlement to not work too hard. And these things are things that have been all about helping us understand how to be the parent, right? And how to control ourselves, how to control ourselves emotionally and mentally. Because if you don't know, I'll tell you now, this is a world that is created by law of attraction, right? By our minds and through our emotions, things are attracted to us. So a wounded child needed to learn her own inner power. She needed to learn how to really amp up that power and feel safe in her own body. And so some of the first steps with a wounded child might be understanding those sense of boundaries and having those clear sense of these are my yeses and these are my nos. My body is my body. I am the one who says yes and no. Or even in the subtleness of being in a work environment, for instance, and people just pouring work on you, right? And saying, here, do this, do this, do this. When we have no clear boundaries. Saying, listen, I cannot do all of this. I'm only human. There are only 8 hours in the day, and how I would love to serve you, but I simply cannot. So can you get me some help? Can you help me through this? Is maybe there's a more efficient way. So she learns to partner with people. She learns to understand how to be in her power in conversation. Not in a self-righteous way or in a way that I'm entitled to this, but in a way in partnering in a win-win scenario. And this is true for all of the archetypes. So the wounded child really needs to understand that those wounds are not to be picked at either. Because in the picking of the wounds, they never heal. They always just getting scabbed over, and then we pick the scab, and we go back and we look at it again, and it never heals. So she has to learn to grow up herself and be a strong woman in the world and understand how to do this through the mirroring of other people in the world. It may not be our parents, maybe a good mentor, maybe somebody that she studied in a book. But she has to know who those people are for her. The second one is the abandoned child. And there's a little bit of the same thing with the wounded child. But the abandoned child, of course, is your orphan child, the child that was maybe abandoned by the mother or the father, or one of the parents left, or that was given up for adoption. Sometimes the abandoned child just feels abandoned by God, abandoned by the world, and is really about a return to self-love and a return to knowing of spirit, that is the one father and the one mother that lies within her. And again, that she is always safe and cared for as she knows how to take care of herself and become self-reliant. So her biggest soul contract is about self-reliance and abundance in this. Not to totally be alone, but to know how to partner with the right people, the people who are wanting to give to her the gifts of their heart. The other ones are the eternal child, and the eternal child is like your Peter Pan child, the child who always feels like everything is fantasy, we can do everything, we can create magic in the world, right? And we go through a kind of evolution of our inner child, because I started out with my wounded child, of course, but then I'm moving in now into this space of the eternal child, It's like, let's create magic. Now that I know my power, now that I know the ability to really create in this universe, I want to create magic. And I've studied all these things about the heart space and the magic and the zero field and quantum physics and God meeting science and how we can go into the quantum field and change things with our minds. That's the magic of the eternal child. And of course, the eternal child feels forever young. Right? So, of course, I go through my buying phases of beauty cream after beauty cream, pouring it on me until you realize, the eternal child realizes, it is not this cream that is going to make me young. It's the way I feel inside. It's the biggest wrinkle eraser, right? To be in joy and play. So the next one is divine child. And the divine child is one who is always wanting to be of service. These are the children who have always wanted to heal the pets. You know, they're typically the ones that have such a affinity for other children, and they have affinity for the animal kingdom. And they really want to be sometimes in the savior complex, but they really are the ones who are out there wanting to serve in the world. And the biggest pitfall for them is this savior complex, where they have to understand that they can't save anyone. The only way that they can be saved is through themselves and through showing them that way of how to save themselves. And then, of course, it's their responsibility to do that. So the art of letting go. And so that's part of the natural child too, in some ways too, because the natural child is a big naturalist. She's your herbologist. She's the one that wants to be out in nature. She retunes herself in nature. If she doesn't get outside, she goes crazy. You know, or he. And the nature child is one with the elementals, with the elemental kingdom, and likes to be, you know, sometimes the fairy godmother in situations, and to heal the planet that way, or the fairy godfather if you're a man. But the nature child gets stumbled in the real world too sometimes, because we can't always be out in nature. We have to learn to create in nature. We have to learn to be able to balance with nature. A lot of times they don't know their own nature, and so they have trouble relating to people. And they have trouble relating to this kingdom. And so they go and they play in the trees, you know, and they go and they sometimes escape through nature. And they go off into solitude. Sometimes they can be your hermit archetype too, mixed in with that, where all they do is end up in nature, and then they have no relationships. And we're here to be in relationship. We're here to be in relationship with ourselves, first and foremost, to know thyself, be in relationship with others, and relationship with spirit, which of course is a relationship with self, right? And so the inner child is one of those archetypes that can really help you to empower. It can help you to prosper. It can help you to be a magnet in this universe once you come into a union with it. And what I have found throughout my soul work is that the healing happens in layers. It happens to be almost like a download sometimes when you start to do this information, where the archetype weaves in through your chakra system. But just know that you just start to feel better. And so this is time for you to go inward. And you can do this with a partner like myself, or I can take you into the Akashic records of your soul records. We can pull the records of your inner child, your child's vision for you. You can do it in your own meditation practice. You can drop into your heart space in your meditation, and in the divine light call forth this inner aspect of yourself. And you can ask questions of your inner child. And I would write them down first. Don't try to come in and out of your meditation, but just be present with your inner child. One of the questions to ask is, what do I need right now in my life to feel good? What do I need right now in my life to feel good? Then you might ask, what do I need right now to feel safe? And what do I need to feel whole? To feel whole. Now, as you ask these questions, ask them one at a time, and then just sit and listen by focusing on your heart. You might get a dream journal, because you might have dreams that come the next night. Don't be surprised if you don't hear anything the first time, but be surprised and know that if you're intuitive enough, you'll start writing a lot of stuff. You'll start to heal right away. The first thing my child told me is that, man, you got to be with people. Stop being your hermit. You know?
Who are you calling a hermit?
Me. Get out and be with people. I can't play if I don't have anyone to play with. You know? And so I do that. Get out there, get myself out of my cocoon of safety. And it was hard at first. It was really hard. Only in the sense that I could kinesthetically feel like my spirit wanting to shake away the years of debris inside of me that kept me in that cocoon of safety. And I had to learn how to interrelate with people, right? And learn how to have that skill of communication, but in a free way. So it was healed, like these just shield coming down, right? And that's what she was teaching me, that as children we're not scared to play. There's nothing wrong with just laughing at yourself and saying, oh, I effed up today. I didn't know how to speak to that person. Oh, they'll get it later, you know, whatever. And I think that's the great grace in these archetypes, is that each step of the way they'll be there to kind of hold our hand, because they're all holy parts of ourselves. They're all parts of the divine whole of Mother, Father, God within us. And they're here to hold us. You know, they're reverent pieces of ourselves that want us to connect so that we can know the grace of our being, the wellspring of our being, our own inner wealth, and our own power. And it doesn't happen overnight. And sometimes we can't get our own stuff. Sometimes there's just this deep blind spot within you because you've built up so much scar tissue around the problem that you just can't see it. And that's where these lovely intuitives can help and guide you, because they can see it, you know. And soon after you start doing the work, you'll start to feel more grounded in your body. You'll start to feel like, wow, you wake up one day and go, I want to paint. I want to finger paint. I'm going to invite some girlfriends to a cosmic tea party and have some meditation and fun with our angels and sip on some tea and then go out and walk by the lake and talk to the fairies. You know, and those are the types of things that your inner child would start to bring up for you. Now, the inner child has a very tender part too, and a very sweet part that needs co-parenting with your inner parent, the part of you that is whole, right? So we ask our higher self to guide us in this inner work so that the parent can come in and hold you and cradle you through the process of wholeness, of returning back into wholeness. And the inner child, of course, is not afraid, is never afraid to go out and play and even afraid to die, actually. When you really start to feel the power of her, she knows her transcendence. And she knows that the game of life, right, has this whole dimension is kind of like playing a game or being in a play, right, that you get to choose the role that you play and to create it in the way that you want is fun. That this is meant to be fun. It is meant to be not all about healing and crying it out and making sure that we're peeling back the layers, but more about stepping into empowerment, stepping into enlightened parts of ourselves. And so for me, at first, it was always about picking at the wounds and saying, okay, how deep can I go? How deep can I go into this? What layer is left? But you know, by law of attraction, you're just going to keep pulling up more and more layers. We're multidimensional beings that live thousands of lifetimes, right? And so then it starts to get like, okay, enough. I'm crying inside. And this is just like slaving. You can't slave and be your inner child. You have to work less at it and just follow the one thing, the one piece that she gives you, and let that be the blossoming of your new higher ideal of play. From there you'll learn and you'll grow. And as you start to follow this inner child guidance, you'll feel more whole, you'll feel more stable, you'll feel more sure. You'll feel like play will be attracted to you. And you may even have to go, wait, I'm overplaying now, I've got to get some work done. And that's when the inner parent will come in and say, you know, this is overload. I can't play all the time. You know, I have to also be practical in some ways. But the inner child knows how to bring the play into the practical side, into the practical stuff too, right? Like, for instance, you know, I go into my work and I want to write an article, and sometimes I start thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do, what I'm going to write about, and I start slaving about it, you know, I'm saying to myself, there's nothing new, and then I hear, go play, just go play.
Nice.
Yeah, go play, get it out of you, then write, then come back, then the answer will be there. But if I'm in that part of me that's like, I gotta get it done, you know, which we all get into that, you know, problem orientation, like this has got to get out now, then she gets stuck and our whole energy starts to collapse on in us. And so step by step we learn to take those little breaks. If you're a nature child and you have that as part of your construct, you go outside, you go hug a tree, you listen to the leaves and the trees and dance with them. Or if you're like me and have an inner artist, you go and you draw. Or maybe you color, you go get a coloring book and you color. Or I like to play with my crystals. That's divine play for me, to get out there with my crystals. Or I call my best friend Zedra, who's singing, and we go out and have a wonderful time in the park, or eat just a wonderful, scrumptious lunch, just like we were children, delighting in the flavors. So these are all things that you can begin to do for yourself. If you find for any reason that you're having trouble integrating your inner child, that's when I would recommend that you do get with somebody who's a healer or somebody who's a spiritual mentor who can access that energy for you and find out what your needs are. Okay? That's it for today. I know I have the next person coming up. My booth is across from here, hearttransformations.com. And I have a freebie at my table, so feel free to come by and take the postcard or sign up for it. Much love to all of you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ciao.